In the dusty outskirts of Kaduna State, Nigeria, young Angela lived in a crumbling clay house with her parents and elder brother, James. Their days were marked by hunger and hope, wrapped tightly in the scent of dry Harmattan winds. Her father worked long hours fixing broken zinc roofs and carrying crates at the village market, often returning with blisters instead of money. Her mother sat under a faded umbrella, selling tomatoes and bitter leaf to passers-by, who often bargained ruthlessly. James, her brother, roamed far and wide seeking work, but with nothing to his name, he was dismissed as a liability by those who could offer him a chance. They had once lived in a small rented house in the village center, but when the rent piled up and the landlord grew tired of their excuses, they were evicted. For months, they lived in an abandoned poultry shed on the edge of town, exposed to rain, snakes, and shame. Angela remembered those nights huddled together, soaked to the bone, praying for morning light. Yet in all this despair, her parents clung to one belief: education was salvation. Her father often told her, "Money slips through fingers, but knowledge sits inside your bones." Even when they couldn't afford to eat, Angela and James were never pulled out of school. Angela walked miles barefoot to the local public school every day, her stomach empty but her mind full. She devoured her books like food, refusing to let poverty win. And then, one dry season afternoon, as the mango trees dropped fruit and goats wandered lazily across the schoolyard, her life changed. A letter arrived. She had won a full scholarship to study in Zaria. It was a passport at an unexpected golden bridge to a different world. University life in Zaria felt like entering a parallel universe. Angela was no longer just the barefoot village girl. She was a student among scholars. Her roommates came from cities: Abuja, Lagos, Enugu girls with iPhones and stories of summer vacations in Ghana. Angela wore her second-hand skirts with pride, her village accent softening over time, but never fully disappearing. She worked hard, often staying in the library until the lights flickered off. Hunger still haunted her, but it no longer defined her. After graduation, Angela found a modest job as a cashier at a small accounting firm in town. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her a roof, a fridge, and the power to send something no matter how small back home. Her parents were proud. Her brother James, still struggling, called often to hear her voice, his own heavy with quiet defeat. Angela believed her struggles were behind her now. The dust of the village, she thought, had been swept off her feet, but in the quiet moments the pain returned. Love was something she longed for, a companion to make her heart feel seen. Men approached her, some with charm, others with pretense, but once they asked about her past, everything changed. "You slept in a poultry shed?" one had asked, eyes wide with hidden disgust. Soon they disappeared. No one wanted to build a future with someone who had crawled from the ashes. Angela told herself she didn't need them. But deep inside, a loneliness bloomed like an unwanted weed. James, too, bore the curse of their past. Each time he met a woman, things would begin with laughter and hope, but end in whispers and judgment. "He's the boy from the streets," people said. No woman wanted a husband with empty pockets and a history soaked in hardship. Angela watched the light fade from her brother's eyes as rejection after rejection crushed his spirit. He had worked, he had tried, but their name etched in poverty followed him like a shadow. Angela had once dreamt of building a new name, a new legacy, but even her degree could not erase the past. Then one dusty evening, her mother returned home carrying a brown envelope. Her father followed silently behind, his eyes heavy with something she couldn't name. "Angela, come inside," her mother called. They sat around their small wooden table, the air still and thick. Her father placed the letter before her. "A wealthy man wants to marry you," he said. Angela blinked, stunned. Her mother's voice shook as she added, "His name is Mr. Daniel. He's from our village, but now lives in the city. Owns land, trucks, and several shops." Angela's fingers trembled as she picked up the letter. The man was 62. The letter spoke of security, comfort, and care, but none of love. Her chest tightened. Was this the only way out? The next day, strangers arrived at their home. Two men carried sacks of rice, beans, and flour. A third held cartons of cooking oil, canned tomatoes, and even a gas cylinder. "A gift from Mr. Daniel," they said. Angela's mother burst into tears. Her father whispered thanks, his voice cracking. Angela stood still, staring at the mountain of food, a month's supply, maybe more. For the first time in years, there would be no hunger. That night, Angela couldn't sleep. She sat beside a kerosene lamp, the letter in her hand, her future balancing on its edge. She didn't want this life. She was only 23. She wanted love, laughter, children with bright eyes, and a husband who knew the taste of her dreams. But dreams didn't put food on the table. Then as she shifted through an old box, she found something that broke her heart, a hidden medical report. Her father needed urgent surgery. It would cost more than they had ever earned in a lifetime. No one had told her. They wanted to shield her. Angela sobbed quietly into her pillow. The next morning, she walked up to her parents and said the words that carved a scar into her soul. "If this is what I must do to save our family, I will do it." Her mother cried and hugged her. Her father nodded, eyes brimming. A choice had been made, but the cost was her freedom. The wedding was set in just 2 weeks. Angela's best dress, a faded blue gown that had survived 3 Christmases, was carefully ironed and folded. Her hair was plaited in neat rows by Auntie Bisi, the village's most gifted stylist. Whispers traveled like wind through cassava fields. "She's marrying Mr. Daniel," they said, voices laced with both awe and pity. Some saw her as lucky. Others called her a sacrifice in human form. Angela ignored them all. Her soul had already retreated far away. The morning Mr. Daniel was to arrive, the village fell into unusual silence. James stood near the gate, arms folded, eyes scanning the horizon. Then through a cloud of red dust, a sleek black SUV rolled down the narrow village path. It gleamed like oil in the sun, a foreign object in a place of rusted wheelbarrows and barefoot boys. Angela's breath caught in her throat. This was no longer a story, this was real. The car stopped in front of their house. A man stepped out. He was older, just as the letter described, gray beard, wrinkled hands, and a cane to support his slow steps. But there was something gentle in his eyes. He greeted everyone with respect and finally turned to Angela. "You must be Angela," he said. His voice was rich, like a storyteller's. She nodded slowly, watching him. He wasn't cruel. In fact, he seemed kind. They sat under the mango tree and talked. She expected awkward silence, but he spoke with grace, asking about her dreams and listening like they mattered. She relaxed just a little. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be as terrible as she thought. The wedding day arrived like a thief in the night. The entire village gathered, some out of joy, others for gossip. Angela wore a simple white wrapper and blouse, her veil handmade by Mama Efe with lace from Kano. The church was a modest mud brick building, decorated with woven mats and dry flowers. Mr. Daniel stood at the altar in a flowing agbada, his face solemn, eyes soft. Angela's heart pounded like a festival drum. As she walked down the aisle holding her father's trembling arm, Angela tried to silence the war inside her. She looked at Mr. Daniel and saw not a man, but a symbol of survival, of sacrifice. Her voice cracked as she said, "I do." She didn't feel like a bride. She felt like a prisoner marching with dignity. The congregation cheered, the choir sang. The ceremony was over, but Angela's new life was just beginning. They left for the city that afternoon. The car glided past open fields and busy towns until it reached a compound so large it looked like a hotel. The gates opened to reveal a mansion wrapped in glass and concrete. Inside, everything sparkled: chandeliers, golden handles, polished marble floors. Angela had never seen such wealth, but instead of awe, fear wrapped around her chest. This was not her world. Mr. Daniel, now her husband, led her inside gently. "You'll get used to it," he said, but Angela wasn't sure she ever could. That night, Angela sat on the edge of the massive bed, her fingers twitching with anxiety. Mr. Daniel had gone to shower. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. Angela sat frozen, staring at the closed door. Something felt wrong. The water was still running. Her thoughts spiraled. Was he sick? Had he fallen? Or worse? Suddenly the bathroom door creaked, but the man who stepped out was not the Mr. Daniel she had married. He was young, early 30s, handsome, and wet from the shower. A towel wrapped around his waist. His eyes locked on hers. "Angela," he said softly. Her heart jumped. That voice, it was the same voice as Mr. Daniel. She gasped and backed away, her legs trembling. "Who are you?" she cried. The man stepped forward. "Angela, it's me." She shook her head violently. "No, where's my husband?" The man sighed, then reached for a leather folder on the table. Inside was a photo, Mr. Daniel in full makeup. The truth unfolded like a storm. He had disguised himself. "My name is Daniel, yes," he said, "but I'm not 62. I never was." Angela's mind reeled. "Why?" she demanded. "Why would you lie?" His answer was simple. "To see if you would choose love or just money." Angela collapsed onto the bed, her world tilting upside down. Her husband had never been old. He had never been what he seemed. And now the real test had just begun. Daniel sat beside Angela, not touching her, just watching her breathe. "Let me explain," he said. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run, but she listened. "My grandfather was the real Mr. Daniel, wealthy, respected, and dying." Angela's eyes widened. "He came to your shop once," Daniel continued. "You bought him bread when he couldn't pay. You gave him your scarf when he was cold. He never forgot it." Angela remembered. The tired old man who came in one rainy night, shivering and penniless. She had given him food, warmth, and dignity, never expecting anything in return. "That was your grandfather?" she whispered. Daniel nodded. "He died a few weeks later. But before he passed, he made me promise to find you, to marry you." Angela's chest tightened. "So this was all a test?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, I wanted to see if you were the woman he believed you to be. So I aged myself with makeup, made my voice hoarse, and came to your village." Angela stared at him, her eyes clouded with tears. "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said, standing up. "The truth is in your hands. I don't want a wife by force, but I do want you, Angela, the real you." She looked at him, her heart torn between betrayal and wonder. Could she learn to love the truth? Angela spent the next day in silence, wandering the wide hallways of the mansion like a spirit caught between worlds. The Daniel she had married was a mask, but the Daniel standing before her now, the younger one, was not a stranger. She remembered the way he listened, the way he respected her parents, the way he didn't treat her like a burden, but like a story worth knowing. Her heart was torn in two, anger at the lie and wonder at the truth it had revealed. In the backyard garden where the hibiscus bloomed, Daniel found her. He brought her a tray of akara and pap, just like her mother used to make on Sunday mornings. She stared at the meal in silence. "You remember?" she asked. "Everything," he replied. "Even how you counted each naira at the market before buying rice for your family." He sat beside her on the wooden bench, not too close. "I know I lied," he said, "but my intention was never to deceive you. It was to find the one thing money can't buy: genuine love." That night, it rained for the first time since she arrived in the city. Heavy, loud rain that shook the rooftops. Angela stood at the window, watching the drops race down the glass. In her chest, a storm raged too. But in that storm, something began to shift. She remembered her father's words, "Money comes and goes, but knowledge stays." She had gained something more than knowledge now, truth. Angela walked to Daniel's room, knocked once, and entered. "I'm not ready to be your wife," she said, "but I'm ready to start again, without masks." Daniel smiled, not the polished smile of a rich man, but the tired, real smile of someone who had finally earned something priceless. 6 months later, the village of Tudanwada buzzed with a different kind of gossip. Angela had returned, but not alone. She arrived in a modest car with Daniel beside her. this time wearing jeans and a plain polo, no disguises. Children followed the car, women peeked from windows, and the men gathered under the tree to whisper. But Angela didn't care. She walked hand in hand with Daniel to her family's house, where her father sat under the neem tree, recovering from successful surgery paid for in full. Daniel had insisted on making no grand gestures, no new houses, no flashy gifts. Instead, he donated anonymously to rebuild the village school, installed boreholes for clean water, and started a scholarship fund in James's name. James, now enrolled in a vocational tech institute, had begun smiling again. The family, once branded by poverty, was rising, not because they begged, but because someone believed they were worth investing in. Angela had once thought her life was ruined by sacrifice, but now it felt redeemed by love that had grown slowly, painfully, honestly. Under the mango tree, Daniel knelt not with a cane, not in disguise, but as himself. He held a simple ring. This time, he said, "I want you to marry the man, not the mystery." Tears welled in Angela's eyes. She remembered the rainy nights in the poultry shed, the hunger, the pain, the fear. And now, standing in the same soil where her story began, she saw not the ashes, but the rainbow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The village erupted in cheers. Our second wedding was small, filled with drums, laughter, and dancing under the stars. No pretenses, no secrets. Just a girl who once had nothing, and a man who chose truth over wealth. And in the heart of Nigeria, beneath the red soil and rain-filled skies, they began again, this time as equals, as lovers, and as something even more powerful: soulmates. The end. What did you think of Ashes and Rainbows? Did the twist surprise you? Did Angela make the right choice? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this story and want more heart-touching, unpredictable narratives set in Africa, don't forget to subscribe for the next mind-blowing tale. Your support means everything. Subscribe now and join the journey.